Welcome to the Openhearted Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Openhearted Podcast. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and I'm joined with my main man, Photon John. What's going on, brother?
Just sitting out the heat in Queensland.
Sitting out the heat.
It's pretty insane. We had a good half a week of no humidity, and now it's back to just unlivable.
Humidity, eh? You know what? That's the one thing I do not miss about not living in Brisbane anymore is the humidity, man. But I tell you what, like down here in Sydney, it's a bit overcast. It is hot, so it is a little bit humid, but it's not Brisbane humid, if you get my drift. And people who are listening who live in Sydney, Brisbane humidity is completely different to anywhere else type of humidity. You can probably compare Thailand and all that, the same thing, but a little bit different.
Thailand is the only place I've ever experienced worse humidity than here.
True. But anyway, besides humidity, we should really get stuck into the episode today. You know, this one, we've got a really cool topic that we're covering. So this week's episode, we're covering working a trade with autism. And Kev, you know, you got your main man here. Did you want to introduce him while I bring him up on the stage?
Yeah, so Tom and I met a few years ago. Hey, Tom, how you doing? So we met a few years ago. I think it was a live music venue, I think, and got to talk and actually knew each other for quite a while before we realized, or it came up that we're both autistic. So we've had some really good chats about that, and I kind of been wanting to do like a sort of everyday heroes thing on here every now and then, and just because it's amazing to talk to doctors and professors and stuff, but it's good to just hear from people who just succeed in everyday life. I wouldn't say despite neurodiversity, but with neurodiversity. So I thought it would be good to have a chat to Tom because he kind of amazes me a bit with how he copes and how well he does in particularly with work. I was quite impressed with that because I know a lot of autistic people can struggle in a workplace. I know. So, Tom, I came up a little in the trades when I first left school. I was working just as a labourer and a few different things. And I found it quite difficult as an environment myself. I know we're all different, but I guess if you could give us a little background on yourself and what you do for a living, and then we'll get into a little about what it's like dealing with that environment with autism.
Yeah, so I'm a qualified cabinet maker. That crosses over into a bit of shop fitting as well. I'm actually not even working in my trade at the moment. I'm working for a place called Urban Art Projects in the foundry. So making molds out of sand and casting metal into them. But I've been in construction for like 16 years or something. Quite a while now. There are elements that don't agree with the autism and stuff like that, but I'm pretty good at managing it nowadays. And now that I understand more about my mental illness and all that sort of thing, it's easier to cope and get around things. I found school to be quite a struggle, but then once I got into a more hands-on environment in the trade, I really quite excelled.
Yep. So you quite liked working with your hands?
Yeah, very, very hands-on, very, that sort of learning is good for me. I'm not good at like writing essays and stuff.
Okay.
Hey,
sorry, you go.
Sorry, Tom. You were saying something that you do. You're doing something else outside of your trade. Is that something to do with art or something like that? Did you say?
Yeah, it's working for a mob called Urban Art Projects. A mate of mine got me the job. He's my supervisor, and they do a lot of the big metal sculptures around Brisbane and stuff that you see. So it's vastly different from what I've been doing in the past, but I'm really, really enjoying it.
And what sort of stuff? What sort of stuff have you done around Brisbane?
Well, we've got a number of projects. They take a little while to go out and get installed and all that sort of thing. We've done things like we do a lot of Indigenous art and stuff like that. because a lot of our work is government funded and stuff like that. But like we do big sculptures. We did a big wallaby last year. We're doing wall paneling for QUT, all out of aluminium with all patterns and things molded into it and all that sort of thing. So that's like a big mural thing that gets slapped on the wall.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, like all sorts of things. These are the guys that did the National War Memorial down in Canberra.
Okay, great.
Nice. Yeah, and it must be, you know, like you were saying, going from your trade into this type of area is the art something you never thought you'd sort of go into that area, or what's the change been like?
Yeah, it's been really good. Like I said, not something I really thought I'd go into, but it's been a pretty good transition. Like again, it's a very hands-on sort of job, and it's all just competency based on the job training sort of thing. So no, it's been a good little transfer, and like I said, we've got a good crew there. They're looking after us, paying us well, you know, making sure we've got all the tools we need and all that. So yeah, it's a good environment.
It sounds somewhat trade similar, at least.
Well, yeah, there are trades. I mean, we've got like a pattern team that makes the pattern for the art, and then that comes up to us, and we mold it, and then cast it, and then it goes next door, and there's like boilermakers and finishers and stuff next door that weld it all together and make it look pretty.
Okay. And does that sort of help you in that you can sort of hyper focus a bit on the project?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, it's good. I picked everything up really quickly, and like I said, I'm enjoying it, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, I don't know about yourself, but I find if you get thrown into something, you know, with me when I got into
Sorry, Kev, we can't hear you at the moment, brother. There we go.
Cool. Slight mic issues again. I'm gonna have to just throw that thing out. When I got into the digital marketing side of things, no experience, nothing that could really relate to it, but I just was interested in it, and I just sort of took to it like a duck to water, and stuck with it. Been with it ever since. Yeah. Cool. So, can you give us a little bit of background, I guess, on your neurodiversity, your journey with that? When I guess you or your family might have started to notice, and how you've come to terms with it.
Yeah. Look. For years and years, I was getting told by doctors that I had depression and I had anxiety and I had all this and all that. And then I finally sort of really reached out to a psychologist and then got onto a psychiatrist and all that sort of process. That wasn't until I was 26 or 27. Like I said, I was just getting told by doctors I had depression and anxiety. And then it turns out like the anxiety was more sensory overload and depression was burnout and stuff like that. And it really answered more questions than it raised for me. The sort of things started to make sense. But yeah, just.
So it was more self-driven. It wasn't like your family noticed a lot.
No. In fact, I don't think I've even really told my mom and dad. Just didn't feel the need.
Well, they might find out watching this podcast.
And how much did your life change when you found out you've gotten this, or not gotten, but you've always had it? Yeah. It obviously would have made a lot of sense with a lot of stuff, but like it would have been a real big change for you, and probably something to be able to handle and manage a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I understand more about the symptoms and the the warning signs and things like burnout, it's a lot easier to manage. And yeah, like as I said, it explained a lot about coming up as a child and going through school and the difficulties I had and how I learned better on the job with my trade and all that sort of thing. So it really did answer some questions for me.
And out of curiosity, right, like, you said that you got diagnosed, I think you said you were 26, around that age or whatever.
Yeah,
so what was it like at school for you then, if, being undiagnosed, not knowing, how was that, around those
difficult. I didn't have a great time at school. I didn't feel like I had a lot of close friends. And, it just felt out of place always, And like I said, I struggled with a lot of subjects. The two things I did actually do well in school were the sciences and workshop. So it sort of made sense to get a trade. But yeah, like I really enjoyed the sciences, and I ended up as an adult being a snake breeder and stuff like that. And I taught myself a bit about the genetics behind breeding different patterns and colors and all that sort of thing. It was really one of my hyperfixations. So yeah, I guess the autism sort of helped me learn, things that I enjoy and all that sort of thing. But I didn't realize that was a hyperfixation until obviously, speaking about it with the psychiatrist and that. And I was like, oh, that's why I was so good at reading snakes.
What sorry, Kev. Out of curiosity, what was it? Reason being, I've actually we've just and for anyone listening, we've actually just uploaded all of our previous podcasts onto like a lot of podcasting platforms now, like Spotify and all that. So I've been listening to a lot of the old ones that we did ages ago. And what was your like your transition from school into, say, once you left school? Because I think a big thing with Kev and I was, that stuff, because for one, we'll start stuff.
Sorry, Will, you're glitching out a bit there.
I suppose our career pathways. Yeah, our careers there. So what was that like for yourself?
Like I said, school wasn't great for me. I didn't really, except for one mate, I didn't really talk to anyone after school. Sort of started afresh, I guess. Once I got into the trade environment, I made friends with people at work. I was going out to venues like Rosie's and 299, hanging out with my brother and stuff. And just through there, I gained a lot of friends and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it just made sense to get a trade for me. And in the last couple of years of school, I really sort of had to drive that into my parents as like, I'm not going to uni. Like, it's just not going to work out. And it was quite easy to get into a trade. And as soon as I was there, it just worked.
I had a similar experience with mum was always really supportive of me doing something that I genuinely wanted to do. She didn't want to push me into work that I hated, but I knew by the end of year, really the end of year 10, but by the end of year 11, I knew that school wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go. And the school were funny because they were like, we can see how much potential you have when you're doing these couple of subjects that you love. For instance, I was really good at legal studies for some reason, and English. Failed music miserably, weirdly, but
I didn't do music after year 8.
Right. But music. I was going to say before, I think because it's how we met, and it sounds like that's how you started to make friends too, going to those venues and seeing live music. Because I think you can be, at least for me, it was like I could be hyper fixated on one band, like the Smashing Pumpkins, or I could just go to a live show. And I had it yesterday, for example. I was at a show in the afternoon, and I was having a bad day for sensory processing, and I was finding it troubling. When I first got to the venue, people were talking to me, and I can just hear everything else going on, and I was having trouble, and I could tell they thought that I was being a bit rude or didn't care about what they were saying or whatever. But it was just that as soon as the first band came on, that all gets drowned out. And then after the band's over, I'm just relaxed and all going away. And but also, just meeting people. It's a much easier way to meet people. And all they want to talk about is the one thing. Sorry, what was that, Tom?
I could definitely relate to exactly what you're saying there, as far as sensory overload and all that sort of thing. Even just going down the pub on a Friday arvo, sometimes I find I can't even have a conversation with anyone because I can't focus on it. I just hear everything else around me all at once, and then I just can't, can't process, can't make sense of it all.
I remember, aside from both having epic beards and tattoos, you're the only other guy I ever see walking around in a venue with headphones on.
Yeah.
But you know what, that I even think for myself with my ADHD, that's where and ever since I got diagnosed as well, it's now not been a problem, but I'm noticing those types of things as well. Like Kevin, you're coming down to Sydney shortly, and you invited me to come see your band. And one of the things I'm really not stressing about, but I'm like, just that noise. I haven't been able, and I don't drink these days, or I haven't for a while. Back in the day, I would need to ride myself off to be able to go into these venues and really be able to, I don't know, just feel comfortable. Where now I'm really aware of everything that's going on around me, and it can sometimes really throw my sensories out of whack sometimes. So I can totally relate on that on that.
Tom and I have had discussions around that, because you got it's a balancing act when you have autism. You're going into a public place, a couple of beers can really help, just sort of loosen things up, and because you're not, I think it's sort of you're not. It can make you self-conscious when you're not even being as bad as you might think you are. And that just kind of helps that go away, so you can have a conversation and be a little less self-conscious. That doesn't start that sort of feedback loop where your symptoms start getting worse because you're being self-conscious and you're wondering if you're being strange or. But obviously it can go too far the other way too. So you've got to learn not to totally rely on it as a crutch.
Definitely.
So I guess the process of not just through venues and stuff, but moving into adulthood and being, I consider you a successful adult. You have you've got an excellent job, and you cope, and you those things didn't shut you down in the way that some people, unfortunately, with autism, that can happen on a long-term basis or even permanent, where they just go into those environments and it doesn't work, and they find themselves unable to participate again. So. What was that process like for you? When was there like a light bulb moment where you'd been in the work a while and you're like, oh, I've become an adult now, or do you consider yourself an adult now? I don't for myself. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. I don't think there really was a turning point or anything. I just sort of one day I was like, oh, I'm doing the things.
Yeah. Where you're just like, oh shit, I became an adult somewhere along the way. I don't know where it happened. Yeah.
Somehow I'm kind of responsibly.
You're functioning.
So that happened.
Well, okay. So with that sort of that part of your life working, so we're saying you sort of got diagnosed about age 26, 27.
Yeah.
So the trade environment I want to come back to a little bit, because I know for me there's a culture. And I'm not referring, back in the day, maybe there was a slightly more negative, very macho culture. I don't think that's really the case so much these days, but there is a culture there. And for me, I knew I'd come out of this high school culture, which was completely different, then failed at hospitality culture because it's just way too much socializing for me.
Yeah.
And then I just get thrown into this completely different culture again, where it's just like, oh, all right, I need to figure this out. I need to understand these people and what this culture is, if I'm going to fit in, especially because I did find in the trades, and sometimes it's just like a joking thing or whatever, they're having a bit of a laugh in the kind of larrikins, but there can be a bit of rejection there if you don't assimilate very well.
Yeah.
So how did that work? Did you just focus on the work and not worry about that, or did you just find that you assimilated well into that as well?
No, I found that I assimilated pretty well. I've always been a bit of a smart ass, so that sort of worked in my favor, just joking about everything, making everything, a piss take. And it's good. I think that's very much got me by, my sense of humor and just being able to adapt a little bit to the conversation and stuff. And, I felt very, very much into the routine of, Friday Arvo beers and stuff like that. And it just sort of worked for me.
It's hard to hate a V and a meat pie every morning.
But I suppose also too, it can really depend on the person as well. Like, you're probably someone who blends well into that environment where other people may struggle big time. I remember when I was living in the UK, I ended up getting a job in construction, right? And I'd never worked in construction in my life, but I had a big warehousing background where you really did have to, you did have to be a bit of a smart ass and all that, or else everyone would just walk over the top of you type of thing. And I think, I was lucky I was able to blend in well because I had that. But some other people who may be working in those environments may not be able to sort of meet those standards, where it could sometimes be a bit of an issue for others.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Well, we have a couple of funny comments here, Will, from Martin in particular, I think.
Oh, we've got so what do we got? In the UK, what is humidity? Yeah, true.
Humidity is when you have a shower and then get out and accidentally have a second shower in your own sweat.
Yeah. True. Got another person coming through. Hi, Will. It's a frosty Scotland. All right. G'day, Jack. How's it going, my man? All right. We're not rubbing it in at all. We were,
No.
You know what I mean? But that's just Australian weather for you anyway. But you know what? We did actually, I posted this one up before. We did have someone else here, and they said, as someone who also enjoys heavy music in a live setting, it can be very frustrating to experience sensory overload in a setting where you feel like you should be comfortable or okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's especially frustrating when you get into a setting with friends. You know, something that you're excited about, like a friend's birthday, or you know, I have my favorite bar across the road that's basically my cheers. But even those people that I know really well, some days I just walk over and I can't do it. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There have been times where I've been at yard dogs with a bunch of people and things got a bit noisy, and I was just like, I just need to remove myself from the situation at the moment. And it's nothing against them; it was just the environment. And I just had to go.
Yeah,
went from business music and then felt a bit better.
Yeah. Can I say that sometimes I've like gone to like bars where you get there and they're very quiet and all that. Then as the night picks up, more people have come in. Yeah. And I've really struggled with that setting as well, with just so many people around me. It gets louder, all of that as well. And do you know what else you say? And it's interesting with what that other person said before, especially around going to heavy metal gigs and all that. You know, I remember going to like, say, Big Day Out back in the day and be really pumped because I was going to see all these awesome bands and all that. But as soon as I like walked in the gates there, it was amazing how it was like all of a sudden this, I would say, anxiety would just come over me. And I felt like I was a completely different person. And it was just that full-on environment there, you know?
Yeah, I definitely don't think I could do the festivals that I used to do, like Soundwave and all that sort of thing these days. It just too confronting to even think about, you know?
I'm the exact same. I'm just, I for one, I'm sort of couldn't be stuffed standing out all day out there. If I could get backstage passes and be chilled and all that, I could not be stuffed standing there waiting for a beer, and it's probably a light beer. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what's the point?
They give you two at a time. And it's
totally. And you know what? I just probably couldn't back it up the next day. You know, I would just be like, my body just can't handle that, you know?
Yeah, no, I think I'm a bit too old for that sort of thing.
Who would have ever thought we'd get to that age, right?
I know, right?
I forgot that I'm too old for this stuff. I haven't been to festivals in years, but then after COVID, the first big one came, the Good Things Festival. And I was just so excited there was a festival. So I just, before I knew it, I had a ticket. And it was pretty much until I was there on the day that I was like, oh, that's right, my back hurts.
I did something similar with, what was it? One of the other ones that got postponed from COVID, and then finally came around and I didn't even want to go anymore. It was like, oh man, I can't be bothered. Hey,
but do you know what? Right, you know those sort of like, I know like down in like I think it's Redland Bay or somewhere down that way. There's like this winery down there, and they usually have like days on the green or something like that. And people just sit there in their like chairs and watch bands and drink wine and eat cheese and that. And I'm like, You know what? I'm old enough now to enjoy that.
Well, the thing is, Will, we are getting old enough because like the last one they did was like Jebediah and Something for Kate and like all those bands from our era.
Yeah, totally,
It's like, man, I would have loved to have sat on a picnic blanket with some cheese and a bottle of wine and just chilled out.
Totally, man. It'd probably be a really good day, actually.
But Martin made another comment about commuting on the trains, which I agree with. If you want to pull that up,
hang on, I'll get it up in 2 secs. I just pressed the wrong thing there.
Yeah, because I know we've talked about this, Tom.
Commuting myself, being on the trains is a big form of sensory overload, and then getting off, seeing many people and station noise. Yeah, totally, man. I when you're on a packed train or bus or something like that, or even like the airport when it's like fully packed with people as well, can be so overwhelming.
Yeah, this is how the headphone conversation came up, I think, when we spoke about that, because we were talking about trains and buses and stuff. Weirdly, the airport I don't have a problem with because I'm just too excited about flying. But
also, they have bars there. You can just go and have a beer.
That is true, but for someone who's ADHD, right, when there's heaps of people, your patience is very limited. So you go to a bar and it might be a Friday afternoon where it's packed because everyone's flying back to wherever they came from. Yeah. And you're just pissed off because like you're waiting for your beer to come or whatever, or your flight gets delayed and you're even more pissed off. And oh my God, it's just.
And Martin just said, and then playing rugby for a seat.
Oh yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Totally. But sorry, you go, man.
No, well, I guess next point I'd like to get into is, you were saying you kind of assimilated pretty well and you took to it really well, but I've got to assume there's sorry, Martin just said I'm crap in a scrum. There's got to be some stuff that was a little difficult. Do you feel like there was anything, just pie in the sky that you could have had when you entered into a trade that could have been good in terms of support?
I was actually thinking about that today. I'm not really sure. I think there's just the way we're progressing as a society and accepting neurodiversity and all that sort of thing, I think is coming a long way just in the way people view things and all that sort of thing. I don't think there's really any need for specific trade-orientated sort of, education or whatnot. I think it's just coming along as a whole sort of thing, I don't advertise my autism at work, like it's not on my resume or anything, but like pretty open about it, and I've never really experienced any negativity from it, from letting people know that,
And I think probably, sorry to cut you off there, Kevin, and I think the thing with, being pretty open with it, you'll probably find a lot of other people in the trades are open about similar type of things. Like we're seeing a lot of people with dyslexia or probably ADHD as well, So it's probably an environment where people are quite open to it and there is no real bias because a lot of people are the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And a very good example of that was actually a warehousing job that I had, not in my trade, but we had a dyslexic bloke who was one of the supervisors there. And we'd have our daily meeting just before we start work and all that, go over any incidents and all that. And once a week, he would have to read out the sheet, and not one person would laugh or snicker or, and he would really struggle with it. And we'd all just stand there and shut up and listen.
Cool. Yeah, and that's sorry, you go, Kev.
No, you had a point.
Well, I think that's the thing when when you understand what people have gone through with similar things, it's not that big of a deal. And I know for myself, I'm dyslexic and I actually am a teacher. So I'll be teaching stuff and then people, I'm very open with it and people have made remarks type of thing. And I have had to turn around sometimes and say, well, hang on, mate, I'm the one teaching you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, it can be hard, but I think definitely if you have that environment where you're really supportive of one another, it can make it helpful for a lot of people, not just yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I do feel like men in particular, and this could be where me being a little older comes into play, Tom. Mental health discussion has come a long way, like a really long way, especially in the last
I'd say that's definitely a big thing in the trades now too. There's a lot of people doing some fantastic work around that in the trades as well.
Absolutely, because I was doing that like late 90s, and very different environment. Men didn't talk about their mental health at all. And if you did, you were definitely not going to. You were going to pay for it. And I see a lot of this now. I was watching some stuff on YouTube the other day about there's this big movement and all these new organizations coming up trying to get dudes to just open up and talk about their mental health. And I think especially the younger generation of guys really gives me a lot more hope. I think they're way less biased about that stuff, about any stuff really. Even if you're in something that historically was like more of a manly thing, and back when being manly was associated with not talking about your feelings and all that kind of stuff, I'd say it was a slightly more toxic environment. But it sounds to me like it's improving. So that's
definitely is.
And I think it's probably because we are able. Well, one, we're hearing a lot more people talking about stuff. And people are feeling a lot more comfortable around that. I know if I had a boss, like you said, who was dyslexic, that would probably make me want to be open about my struggles as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I've had, Tom and I came across the neurodiversity discussion just naturally, but since I started doing the podcast, the amount of people I already know who I didn't know were neurodiverse or struggled with, especially a couple of autistic dudes I know who have come to me talking about how they struggle with burnout.
Yeah.
We didn't really sort of dive into that earlier, but, you were saying how you thought you were anxious. It was more just social, autism stuff. You thought you were depressed. Also, your doctors thought you were depressed, but it was actually proper autistic burnout. Those two things can look similar. But autistic burnout in particular, that's rough, man. Not to belittle depression at all, but autistic burnout is really intense, and it can last.
Especially when you don't know what it is.
Exactly. And someone's trying to treat you for depression, but that's not what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not helping anything. There have been times where I've struggled to get out of bed for days on end.
And it's like, what's wrong with me, Yeah. It's actually interesting because I was speaking to a female on LinkedIn yesterday, and she said, I struggle with a lot of depression and anxiety and all that. And it's been interesting because we've been talking for a while, and she honestly thinks she's probably ADHD. And the what the problem can be is if you're treating, say, ADHD as depression type of thing, that can be a bit of a problem within itself because, depression can be part of ADHD. So there are bigger types of things that we really need to look at. So, being someone who doesn't understand what they're going through, that can be a really, I suppose, bad thing within itself as well.
Yeah. And if someone's depressed due to the effects of ADHD or due to the effects of autism, your doctor's going to give you a pill that doesn't fix your ADHD or your autism. Might kind of make you not depressed, but it doesn't remove any. But that's purely chemical. It doesn't remove the. You need to back medication up with, and let's be clear, I'm very supportive of medication for people who need it. But you need to back that up with an understanding of the root causes of some problems and some proactive mental health management. And if you don't know what's going on, that purely medication is not going to fix it. You need to do the work to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah,
I think that was. And I think that was why I had such big drug drug and alcohol problems for such a long period of time there because I didn't know that was why I was struggling with that, So for me, say when I'd go to a live music venue, I would just be overwhelmed with all these people. I would just start knocking back drinks as fast as I could. And before I knew it, I was blackout drunk. And people would be like, man, you were this last night. I was lucky I didn't get punched out or something like that. I was probably lucky I had my friends around me and all that type of stuff. But thinking back to it now, it's scary, because now I know why I was like that. I wish I had known that at the time. I probably would have saved a hell of a lot of money too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know how many times I'd wake up on a Sunday morning and have $400 in my wallet and be like, Jeez. What the hell?
I think, neurodiversity can be mistaken for a lot of things. You can be mistaken for depressed, mistaken for anxious, and you might be those things, but for different reasons. Be mistaken for someone who is just an idiot who likes to get blind, rotten drunk at a venue when actually you're just really struggling to deal with the social situation.
Yeah.
And they can mistake your motives. They can mistake, all kinds of stuff. So, it's a tough thing. It looks like what Tom and I were saying before. It's about that balancing act. If you're going to have a few years to make yourself able to do it. And I'm not going to say I never overdo it, but you got to learn to I guess do that mindfully and because it might make it easier for a little bit, but then you reach a tipping point and then it actually makes everything worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, my autism gets worse when I'm more drunk than that sweet middle spot.
Well, I was using it as to socialize. People think people, and I probably do come across as quite a outgoing, friendly type of person, but I do struggle to just make a conversation, randomly go up to someone in a bar and go, oh, hey, mate, how's it going? I got to admit, when I was overseas, it was a lot easier because that's normal because that's just what everyone else does. But here in Australia, it's a little bit different. If I go up to someone and go, hey, mate, how's it going? They're either going to tell me to stick it, you know what I mean? Or they might be really friendly and say, hey, sit down and let's have a chat or whatever. Very rarely does that happen, but, that's what I was using it for. But, like you said before, you would have one, so I'd become very talkative. I'd be like, oh, man, I'm enjoying myself. Knock them back even more. Then the person would probably think, man, this guy's a bloody waster. What the hell's wrong with this dude?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. So, Tom, talking about workmates, your current workmates in particular, I'd be interested in. I know it sounds like a really accepting environment, but also your friends. I know you don't go around advertising, but the people who do know, how do they view it? It sounds like you're surrounded with some really good. I mean, I know most of them, so I know they are good. But, give us a little overview on both of them, work and your friend group.
Yeah, so work's where I'm at the moment is a great group of people. As I said, my supervisor is actually a mate of mine who I've known for 10 years. But I haven't had any sort of negativity. And I think that for the most part is because it shows through my work that, it's something that I've got, but I'm coping with rather than, viewing it as something that might be negative or whatever.
Did you get any positivity around it? Like anything where you go, oh, that's really nice that they, appreciate it?
Yeah. I've had a couple of comments like, oh, I wouldn't have picked you as autistic, but that's nice to know. That's interesting. And then had a bit of a chat about it. As far as friends, well, you would know, but good people surrounding me. I find that a lot of them, as you mentioned earlier, sort of once they find out I'm neurodivergent, they sort of, oh yeah, I'm ADHD, and
I was about to ask that. Do you find you attract similar type of people, and you're like, because that's what we find. Everyone we speak to seems to be the same.
Yeah,
well, he's on a podcast with me right now, so
true.
Yeah, and we definitely gravitate towards other neurodivergents, which is funny in itself because we are technically the minority, but I know so many people that are neurodivergent. It's hard sometimes to think, oh, there's just people that are neurotypical walking around just doing things.
Well, do you know what? Obviously I work in this field. I know a lot about it, and I can like pick it so easily now, and I pick it with people who don't even know that they probably have something as well.
Yeah, I've experienced that quite a few times with friends and that, and I'm like, I reckon you probably got a touch of the autism there,
I can even pick it up like through texting and that. I've been if it's like if someone's texting me and it's sort of a one-sided thing, I'm sometimes like, oh, maybe this person might be like on the spectrum or something like that. I'm only guessing. Maybe they're really rude. I don't know. I have no idea.
I've learned to identify things even more doing this and just having friends like Tom and the friend group there. The Hellbound crew is, shout out to Hellbound Bar. It's a magnet for neurodiverse people, and like none of us even knew until there was a group chat, and I'm in there, and we're all just like, oh, we're all neurodiverse.
I had the same thing with a group chat that I'm in the other day. It was like, oh, so who in here is ADHD? And it was like basically everyone commented. I've got that. It's like, that makes sense.
You don't even realize it. I wonder, I was talking to Will the other day about how it might be cool to do an episode on autistic people or just neurodiverse people in general who are a bit eccentric visually, shall we say. Man, I'm starting to wonder if everyone in the metal community is.
Fair chance, I reckon.
Well, do you know what? Right? So Kev, when you remember I had Candy Shop TV, right? I remember I'd go into a lot of live music venues and all that, and there would be regular people I would see, and I would sometimes go up and say, hey, how's it going? And there were some people who were really standoffish. And at the time, I was sort of like, oh, that person's so effing rude. You know what I mean? But now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, I think that person was actually autistic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just need to pick it so much easier now.
I have a lot of, I can tell you as someone who might have been one of those people back in the day, I have a lot of trouble with energetic people in a social situation. I just kind of, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to handle this, because you're expected to suddenly engage in a quick conversation with the stranger, and you're just like, I struggle to do this with my best friends. I don't know how
but do you know what it was? It was weird because it was like I'd met the person before. So for example, if I meet someone, the next time I see them, I'm going to be like, hey, how's it going? But if I met someone, then the next time I see them, they ignore me or don't say anything, you're sort of thinking, what the hell? Do you know what I mean? But at that point, that's what I thought. Now I'm sort of like, oh, now I get it. Do you know what I mean? Where the person probably wasn't being rude. They probably weren't rude at all. It was just who they were.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a
By the way, you were always cool, Kev.
Yeah, I think I was. Yeah, I was
you never stiffed me, mate. Eh?
No, but I was just barely learning to react and interact with people as an adult at that point, and that was like my early mid-20s or something like that when we met. Probably mid-20s, but I think it took me a long time to get to the point where you met me. I think in earlier years, I may have run away from you.
Maybe. But I think when I'd start hanging. So for everyone who's listening, Kevin used to live right in the valley, and the valley's like a big party precinct of Brisbane, right? So Kevin's place was the place to be, So we would go in. I suppose it was a place you'd go and drink or whatever and go watch a band or whatever, then come back and keep on drinking or whatever like that.
Yeah, you're talking about 2016 though. That was the worst year of my life.
Oh shit, man! Sorry, man.
No. But what I'm saying is, I was partying out of control, and I was doing it because I was not. I knew I had autism, but I wasn't diagnosed yet, and I had no idea how to manage it, and I was really struggling. And I just kind of fell, and I'd just broken up with my girlfriend, and that was a very intense emotional thing for me that I was having a lot of trouble processing. So that basically, I had a getting over my girlfriend weekend that lasted 12 months. And I can say that, you know, and it is funny, but at the same time, I was an autistic person who had a very intense emotional experience and was dealing with a lot of other stuff. Didn't know they were autistic, didn't know how to process it, and it resulted in 12 months that were just the worst 12 months of my life, where I just lost myself because I just couldn't deal with things anymore.
Well, your RSD right there, yeah.
What's that?
Rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
No, I broke up with her, but
still, like you might break up with her, but still you can feel like, you know, lost and sad and all that type of stuff, man. Because
very
you
lost,
feel
very
that
sad.
it ended, you know, because it couldn't keep on going.
I didn't want it to end, but I had a lot of problems, and we all had a lot of, like, it wasn't anyone's fault necessarily. It was just, you know, we had a lot of stuff going on, and it had to kind of end. And but yeah, I just fell into that because all the emotions were so big, I just couldn't do it. So yeah. Anyway, my point is.
Yeah, do you know what's funny? This is about trades and stuff.
Yeah. My point is, I wasn't having as good a time as it might have seemed at that point. Okay, so anyway, sorry, we got a couple of points we have to get through here. So you said that, you know, you got the diagnosis and everything started to make sense. What about the support that you got in that? Was it more that, like, they gave you a bunch of literature to read, or just told you a bunch of stuff that suddenly made everything click? Like, how did that start to help everything sort of slot into place, and you kind of understood what was going on a bit more?
Well, so I got my diagnosis, and obviously I was talking to a psychiatrist at the time, and they sort of filled me in on a lot of things, but then afterwards, I think I just sort of just did my own research, really. Kept reading up articles and all that, whatever I could find on it. And it's been interesting to see the progression from when I got diagnosed to what information there is now. Like, there's terms and things now for symptoms and whatnot that weren't really even around when I got diagnosed.
Yeah, it's probably better research now as well.
Yeah, exactly. They seem to know a lot more about autism, and so
especially for adults as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are getting adult diagnoses now, like I did, which just wasn't a thing back then, I don't think.
No, it was all kids. And it was, you know, I saw a thing on the ABC today about how most of the research that was done just in the 80s and 90s, and it's really just the last 15 years that autism is really, they're starting to really try to understand it properly. It was done on young boys. And usually young boys from affluent families and stuff, you know, they didn't understand that it can present quite different in even just a young boy from a poor family, let alone a girl from a non-white family who's also poor. Yeah, and so they were misdiagnosing for years on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're really starting to get it now. But when you and I were younger, of course we didn't get diagnosed. It wasn't anywhere near as well understood.
No, and I feel like a lot of people probably in our sort of generation would have got misdiagnosed as ADHD or something like that because they were presenting certain symptoms and things like that.
That do overlap.
Yeah, exactly. And so they just put us all in the ADHD bin.
What's that meme with the tub, the water tub with the hole in it? Someone just slaps a sticker on it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We spend too much time on the internet. It really was just getting misdiagnosed all over the place, and women especially, were getting. They weren't even getting diagnosed with the wrong neurodiversity. They would just be told, you've got a lack of Jesus in your ovaries or something. Like it was. like some crazy stuff, you know. So it's nice to see that. But yeah, anyway, the thing I saw on ABC was talking about how that was most of the studies that were done in the early days were of that demographic. So they're just really starting to understand now what it means. You know, I watched Predators, the second most recent Predator movie. Done by the Iron Man 3 director or whatever, and there's an autistic kid in it. I was just sitting there watching it, fuming because it's the typical, you know, rocking back and forth.
Oh my god!
Way of flapping their hands around, and you know, obviously super savant smart. And I was just like, oh man, this is so 20 years ago. You know, like,
I felt the same way. I did watch a movie, and I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but I had an autistic kid, and really portrayed it well. Like I was sitting there watching it, doing the fingernails thing that he was doing. Like, yep, that's a thing.
It might have been an actual autistic actor.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah.
We're getting a bit more of that now. You know, I think representation is good. I don't think that it needs to be 100% of the time. If some, you know, I'm not a straight man. If a straight dude wants to play a gay character, I got no problem with that. You know, it's fine. You know, but I think with autism in particular, what I've seen in the last, you know, forever, is the portrayals have been quite bad. And I think maybe some autistic people and some ADHD people need to get in and play some autistic and ADHD.
Exactly.
People. Yeah. And because the neurotypical people are not doing a good job at portraying us. Yeah.
No.
So, all right, we've covered quite a bit and gotten off track a little bit. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, totally.
I just wanted to ask, you know, you've been through a lot, and I know you've kind of taken to a lot of things well, and you've been lucky in that sense in a bit, but you've definitely had some struggles growing up, and still have some. What's some advice that you would give to young people, you know, about their future, and in particular who might be trying to transition from childhood or teenagehood into adulthood, who might be having trouble because they've had trouble at school, or, you know, they're being, you know, like Will and I, they're being told they're stupid or they'll never be anything, you know, like, and we know they can.
Cool.
What would you say to them? What would you say to them to give them a bit of hope?
Look, everyone's different. We've all got our little quirks and all that sort of thing, and I think just embracing your neurodiversity, and just seeking out the things that you love to do. You're going to be a lot happier if you're enjoying what you're doing as far as work and all that sort of thing goes, rather than trying to fit into some other sort of mold, you know. And
it's not going to work.
Yeah, just be open about it. If you've got a diagnosis, then talk about it, and that will encourage other people to connect with you on that sort of level. As we've discussed multiple times during this conversation, we do tend to gravitate towards each other. And when you can say, oh, I'm autistic or I'm ADHD, a lot of the time someone else will go, oh, yeah, I've got this or I've got that. And you know, just communicating with people like that on that level is going to be immensely helpful.
And you feel like that's kind of what helped you get to where you are?
Yeah, definitely. When I got my diagnosis, there was a period where I wasn't quite sure. I guess I felt a little bit of shame about it, and I wasn't sure how to approach that. And then the more I learned, and the more that I learned, a lot of my friends are neurodivergent as well, with ADHD and similar things, and I embraced it. Then I found that it was a lot easier to cope and recognize, you know, symptoms and the onset of things like burnout and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it really is key to just embrace it. Don't feel bad, because it's not a detriment to you. It's not, you know, it's not a defect. It's something that can be very good. As I've said, like learning how to breed snakes and all that sort of thing, my hyperfixations, the things that I really enjoy, I definitely attribute to being autistic and having those hyperfixations.
Yeah. I remember sort of not long after we had the first conversation where we were talking about how we're both autistic and found that out, I thought back and I'm just like, Oh, the snake thing. It all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like he's really into that. But at least you have something a bit more interesting. Mine's just like the Smashing Pumpkins. I know absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's that?
Funny, man. Funny. I can
Yeah.
do the exact same thing. I can.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity is a huge topic for me. So you get me talking about neurodiversity with me. Sometimes I just won't shut up for ages, especially when I go to networking events and all that as well.
Yeah.
I think, what you were saying about embracing it, Tom's super important.
Because it's who you are,
Yeah,
exactly.
And if you can't be yourself, you're never going to be able to work to your best. So when you can embrace it and be yourself, that's when a lot of good things happen.
That's going to make you very unhappy if you just spend your life trying to pretend to be someone other than who you are.
Nice. Well, awesome stuff there. What an awesome chat, and just something completely different to what we normally do. Now, if there is anyone who might have any quick questions, we've had some people messaging through today. So thank you so much for everyone who has sent some stuff through there. Tom, thank you so much. Hang on, we might have a question here. Who have we got? Oh, no. So we've just got Martin again, raising awareness and being yourself. Yeah, cool. Thank you, mate. Definitely the number one thing there. But awesome stuff there, Tom. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Like I said before, I forgot to do a shout out for our social media platforms. If you are listening, we do have our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we're available on most podcasting platforms now. So please check us out.
That is a big one.
That
is a big one. That is a big one. We're now on Spotify, so
and we should be on iTunes shortly and Google Podcast as well shortly. I'm just waiting for that to get approved, and we should be all ready to rock and roll. But Tom, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. It was definitely something completely different, but really necessary to be talking about as well. But thank you so much. Kev, was there anything else you wanted to go over at all?
Just thanks, Tom. Cheers. Let's do this again in person.
Definitely.
Nice.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
That was good. It was really nice to just get an everyday person's perspective on growing up.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's important for people to hear this stuff.
Cool.
So we appreciate that you were brave enough to do it.
Yeah, totally. So keep up the good work, and hopefully now next time I'm in Brisbane, I might see one of the art sculptures around Brisbane somewhere. Is there anywhere around Brisbane one that would be very noticeable to some people? And you can be like, yeah, man, that's me right there.
I think there's a couple down towards South Bank near the river.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the exact specifics of it. Like I said, a lot of stuff takes a while to go out of the factory, so probably nothing I've worked on yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I'll tell you what.
If it's big and it's metal, we probably made it.
Yeah, nice.
I'll tell you what, you send it to us when you know of something, and we'll chuck it on socials.
Totally. Yeah, totally. That could be actually pretty cool to post up. But awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Tom. My name's Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. Thank you so much for everyone who's been listening. This is the Open-Hearted Podcast. Until next time.